How's it going, y'all? Welcome, welcome. Do you guys have off tomorrow or just no students?
We're completely off. We did our conferences last night and Tuesday night. So for us, it's a trade day.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Us too.
Definitely earned it. The longest month of the year.
Those were my favorite days of like those 2 exhausting days of like after school conferencing, but then like the sweet gratification of having that flex day. We're gonna give
And daycare being open. Sorry, I interrupted you, but yeah.
Okay, we're gonna give everybody another minute or so to pop on in. But in the meantime, I'm gonna drop our slide deck link in the chat, just in case y'all don't have it. And we can go ahead and start on our warm welcome. We've got a pretty small group right now, which is awesome. So what that means is we can really narrow our focus into what's going to be most impactful for everybody in this room and have it be a really authentic, true workshopping experience, which is going to be great. So that being said, I actually think that what we can do is just do a quick whip around real fast, Kaylee. Just because we only have a handful of people in here. So we're going to get to know each other very well. We're going to be best friends at the end of this, going out afterwards, of course. So who wants to start us off?
Well, I can just say who I am. I'm Laura Pullis. I'm at Cheltenham. I am new to teacher librarian position, and our school is heavily into PBL. We've just done a very quick, like a 3-week one, but now we're going to get into it more seriously. So I'm super curious, like what you all can tell me about how to collaborate and help this process.
What did you just do for your 3-week project?
We did like self-identity.
Cute.
School-wide.
Cool. I can go, I think. Are you all done? Okay. So my name is Kate Hunter, and I am the math STL at Merrill Middle School. And we are very, very fortunate that one of our deans of instruction is actually a national PBL facilitator. Yeah, it's in our district, in our building. And so we are very much a PBL school with her kind of leading the charge. And so we're going on a couple years now, and I'm just always looking for ways to be better. I'm in the midst of a project right now. So I teach 7th graders. Ellie Faust is her name. Ellie Faust. Okay. Yeah, I see a head nod up there. So the project that I'm doing, backtracking. I teach 7th graders that take 8th grade math. And so we're doing currently a functions project where it's kind of connected to the idea of the imitation game and the code breakers, the Enigma machines. So kids, when they come in every day, they've got codes that they need to break and figure out because the EQ is not the EQ. It's a bunch of random letters. And so throughout that, they're learning about what is and is not a function. And it's been connecting to them, moving towards them creating their own code. So like taking things from the world, taking the alphabet, assigning numbers to the alphabet, and then using a function and an equation rule to do inputs and outputs to make a code that then others will have to break the code.
That sounds awesome. I'll go next because mine's less awesome. I'm Jen. I teach at Isabella Bird, and I'm a fifth grade math, science, and social studies teacher. And I came in here because I haven't done actual project-based learning. I do it on a small scale, kind of like a one-day thing versus. So I'm curious about what else is out there, and also just the math department is came out with a new vision this year of having mixed ability grouping and really moving toward anti-racist practices, and that means a collaboration is it's a challenge for some folks. And so I wanted to do this because I want to help kids be better collaborators, and also love code breaking and want to do that. Okay.
I can go next if you want me to. You guys are scaring me with your math expertise. My name is Angie Collins. I'm a teacher at Bradley International School. I've been fortunate in TPS to attend some PBL backwards design training over my years here. So I've been able to do a lot of PBL projects. I try to integrate PBL as much as possible into everything I do because I think that it's authentic engagement for kids and it's actually real world. And then maybe hopefully someday they can go out into the real world and get along with people and do work and be successful. So I do a lot of different projects. I chose this one because I had done some of the other, I've done this PDU before. So I like it and I'm always learning. So my big goal this year is to learn how to integrate tech into using CKLA, which is our new reading curriculum. But I just like this one because right now my kids are doing a project where they're going to be weather reporters, and they're doing a project on Canva where they're going to record their video. They're basically like writing about how the different conditions of the weather, the features of the weather, how to stay safe, where the location, where the weather happens. And then they're doing the research, then they're going to write a script, and then they're going to create a Canva, and then they're going to record themselves doing Canva. So I thought, well, I can learn ideas for collaboration on Canva because, oh my gosh, I've been having some issues with them deleting each other's slides and stuff like that. So I thought maybe I could learn some strategies.
Well, awesome. So what I'm hearing is that we don't have to sell anybody on project-based learning in this room right now, which is great. We are, just because we have a little bit of differences in experience with project-based learning, we're still going to hit some of our core components. That being said, project-based learning and how you teach project-based learning looks really different depending on what source you're getting it from. So if some of the language that we're using is different than what your school uses, please feel free to ask for clarification if you need it, but also know that like there are different processes, and like always default, if your school has like this is the structure we fall into, please default to that. But we are going to talk about just some introductory concepts to project-based learning, and then we're really going to focus the bulk of our time today into adding those different aspects of collaboration to the various pieces of that project-based learning project that you have going on. So we have people who already have some projects in mind. If you don't have a project in mind yet, just like keep it churning in the back of your head, just because that way you can get the absolute most out of this session. Our goal is always for you to walk out of here with something that you can implement relatively easily after our time together. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and hop on in. Just to ground ourselves in CRE mindsets, just because culturally responsive education is at the core of what we do and what we want to project in these learning sessions. We are focused on high expectations, global context, and learning conditions for our project-based learning focus with the lens of collaboration. So we want to make sure that we keep our expectations high. Again, group work does not mean that, our students are just off doing whatever they want, whenever they want to. There's still rigor attached to it. We still want to make sure that our students are producing their best work and coming with their best selves authentically. We're going to make sure that we do that by keeping those expectations high. We can do that in a lot of different ways. Global context, we are removing ourselves as teachers as this like core person who has all of the knowledge in the room, and I am wisely imparting my knowledge onto you. We are shifting that and putting power into our kids' hands. And that looks like, especially in project-based learning, they get a lot of choice. They get to choose, you know, their paths, their avenues, their interests. And it's not this one size fit all, like, here's your worksheet for the day and you got it right or you got it wrong. There are so many different ways that we can incorporate learning through this project-based model. And then also learning conditions. We're really focused on that collaboration piece, and we're going to make sure that students all have that active, equal participation, even if they're doing different things in that group. Also, when we think of group work, we tend to think of like the traditional, okay, here are 3 to 5 kiddos in a group, and one kiddo is kind of like hunkered down doing everything while the rest of them are talking about the Barbie movie that they went to go see last weekend. What we to brainstorm with y'all today is what are ways that we can take that traditional idea of like what group work is and reframe it in this context of project-based learning. So that being said, we have had our warm welcome and introductions. We are just going to do a little bit more alignment, grounding in our mindset, and then we are going to talk into like, what is project-based learning? What are the key components? And then what are those opportunities, those natural opportunities for collaboration? Even if your whole project itself is not a group project, what are opportunities that we have to collaborate with others during that process?
So I'm just going to give y'all like 45 seconds to a minute to read this brief introduction chunk about what project-based learning is from PBL Works. It's from the Bucks Institute for Education. And this is where I get a lot of my theoretical background on project-based learning from. So there's a link to that site for more of their like explanation on project-based learning if you're interested. But I just wanted to give about a minute to read, and we can all ground in this definition of PBL. And when you're done, just drop 1 or 2 words that really stick out to you around what project-based learning is. Oh, and drop it in the chat. Sorry, I wasn't clear on that. Yes, Jen, I love weeks, and I love how you mentioned like, hey, I might be doing like a 1 or 2 day project, and PBL Works has a really great like page on their website about what a full meal project is versus just a dessert project, and just how to kind of stretch out the experience for a whole unit rather than just tacking it on at the end. I really appreciate that. Yeah, dessert projects, engaging, that's awesome. All right, thank you guys. So these are some instructional elements of project-based learning. And again, this isn't like the only definition and how to implement project-based learning, but it is interesting. While I think a lot of teachers push back around PBL in their classroom because they're afraid of getting LEAP evaluated on that day, and it's not gonna really score them high in LEAP indicators, but each of these phases of project-based learning are grounded in LEAP indicators. So grounding your instruction in real-world relevancy is LE1. Having clear key concepts and content is I1. Sustained inquiry is I2, and the methods that you're using to pace your unit. Student voice and choice is I6, getting differentiation in there. Evaluative criteria is just giving them some checks for understanding in I5. Feedback throughout the project-based learning unit is a recurring cycle, and that hits I7. Getting kids to come together, create, and present a public-facing product is collaboration in I8. And then we have LE2 hitting reflection and just opening up for student voices in your classroom. So this is well supported by LEAP. if you need that mindset shift, and it doesn't sound like we do. But I also want to stress that project-based learning is going to be the best way that we combat AI plagiarizing our student responses in our classroom. When we turn learning into a holistic process rather than just an end product, that's really where we can get kids using AI as a tool and not just their Spark Notes writing their essay for them. And again, we don't really need to go over this super in depth, but as a teacher, you have your instructional practices that you're implementing throughout the project-based learning unit. And in that little blurb at the bottom, I just bolded, teachers need to give up some degree of control over the classroom and trust in their students. And this whole process is shifting that mindset and relinquishing your control and giving that space for student voice and choice. But again, these are great instructional practices to keep in mind. Project-based learning isn't just gluing little cotton balls for a snowman on a piece of paper. You're aligning it to real-world context and standards. Kids are creating a final product and planning their activities out. You are monitoring and assessing student learning throughout this creation and learning process. Your classroom will be building a culture of inquiry inherently throughout the process. You have to scaffold so many skills, and not just content skills, but procedural skills as well that are based in the real world. And you're going to be, instead of a teacher, more of a coach and engaging in feedback throughout that process and learning alongside of your students.
So, with all of that, you are all now project-based learning experts. So what we wanted to just take a second is, if you have been lucky enough to experience one of the Wednesday walkthroughs, you'll notice possibly that you have a lot of people talking with very specific language that's pulled from our instructional rounds tool. So that's what we in Central try to align everything to, again, so that all of your specialists are talking in the same language, supporting the same priorities. So just take a second to read through some of these bullet points. And then I'd like to open it up to, how does project-based learning, how you see it in your classroom, how does it meet these points? So when you're ready, go ahead and just pop off of mute, or you can drop something in the chat. So has anybody implemented, some projects in their course, project-based learning, like concepts that they've seen results in their classroom where they feel like they're more culturally sustaining, they're more linguistically sustaining? How has that shift supported your students, especially coming from people who have, school-wide implementation, or they've been implementing these types of projects for a while? What have you noticed?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
All right, I was going to say, I think one thing that I noticed is, because it's based in a lot of choice for students. For example, last year, kids had to create and run a food truck business, and then they had to go to like Walmart's website and find prices, and they decided to pick like, we want to make these 3 items, and then they had to get the cost for like 1 ounce or the cost for like 1 recipe. And so it was a lot of work with unit rates, which is 7th grade math, and then it added on layers of 8th grade math with like, when, you know, like, what's the intersection point? At what point are you making money? And in terms of just, it was constant collaboration between the students, going like, you know, checking each other's work, and then sharing their menu and their food trucks with their partners. And so I saw a lot of the joy and the culturally sustaining, just in terms of, there was a lot of teamwork and collaboration, but due to the choice, the kids had so much buy-in and interest.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I feel a lot of the times when we start to support instructional materials that are culturally sustaining, it naturally increases that joyful factor in our classrooms because it's relevant. The buy-in is definitely huge. And to watch students like legitimately get jazzed to give each other feedback on things, like, it's all, it gives me like the shivers right now.
I've been doing it for quite some time as well. And I think that it's really good because they learn to communicate better. And I teach at Bradley, which we're an international IB school. So my school is very diverse. And I mean, it's so good for my English language kids, my MLE kids to communicate. And then I have, like in my class this year, I have 5 IEP kids, 2 504 kids. So all those kids get to work with peers that might be more typical. And it just, I feel it really builds them all up, and it increases their ability to present, because they're usually, for my class, they're doing something that they're going to, some of the things like they'll make we do our economics unit where they make something, a product to sell, but then they also have to learn all about the terminology for economics, and then they create advertisements. And you would be like, I'm amazed how much they'll write for an advertisement when they won't write anything if it's a written response. So if they're excited about it and they're interested in it, it's just so much more meaningful. And then I just think that the collaboration, the working together, that's a life skill that will benefit everyone, because that's what we have to do in life, right? So I think it's so good.
Absolutely. Angie, I'm really glad that you hit on the aspect of giving them choice and like just tweaking assignments so that like, hey, you're still writing, like I need to assess you on your writing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like a race paragraph or, you know, something that you're turning in on a slip of paper to me. Like, you can make an advertisement, and that's like a writing sample that I can utilize. Plus, like, it feels more meaningful and authentic to you as a student, so you're more willing to do it, and it's great. Before we move on, I just want to hit some main points. Basically, like, our whole sum up so far is that the difference between project-based learning and just projects is more of the intentional, like, design process. And we're focusing again on that process of learning rather than necessarily that final product. So when we're thinking through these opportunities of collaboration, whether you have a 2-week time period on something or a 6-week time period on something, there are definitely opportunities throughout that learning process for students to engage with each other. Again, even if it's not a full-on group project where at the end of the assignment, they're turning in one product between multiple students.
Slide 17 in our deck looks really dense. I'm just going to go over it in case you want to use this as a resource. Just what Drea said, using collaboration throughout the PBL process as a lengthened experience of learning is definitely something to be skillful when choosing those opportunities for when you want kids to start to work together. PBL Works has great rubrics for kiddos and how to scaffold skill building for kids as they're collaborating. If you're like, I don't even know how to get kids started collaborating, what do I even want to look for while they're working together? These are great student facing rubrics for just what type of skills and competencies kiddos can start exhibiting as they're collaborating. And they have, we included the screenshots, but if you click the screenshots, it'll pull you out into the actual PDF of each of the rubrics. So there's one for K2 that Drea just pulled up. There's one for 3-5, and then there's one for 6-12. And even if you don't want to use the full rubric, but maybe just one indicator at a time, as you're starting to do a slow release of collaboration in your classroom, it can be nice just to focus on one of the rows at a time of skill building. And this is where we are going to get into the opportunities to get kids collaborating throughout the project-based learning experience. So again, the whole project doesn't have to be done by the same group of 4 kiddos. They might actually get really sick of each other if they're working together throughout the whole process. So we identified 5 different areas of PBL where we can bring kids together, move them apart, bring them together based on how you see fit for the project that you're rolling out. So the first way to get kiddos working together is having them generate ideas together. Then we'll go into how they can give each other feedback throughout the PBL process, how they can work together to create a product, how we can incorporate school and community partners to share that collaboration space and open our classroom doors. And again, that big part of PBL is having that relevant real world public facing product and how kids can work together to get that done. You're muted, my guy.
I was saying really insightful things too. So I think that, again, because our group is so small, we don't necessarily need to work off of Canva right now. If you would like to, so that you can like go back and take notes, please feel free. Or if you just want to dive in and see it from, more student experience, that's totally fine. But I think that if we can all take about 30 seconds to think about that upcoming project we talked about at the beginning and points in that process, and I'll go back to our other slide here so that you can see that full screen. But what are points within your project where you would be able to have students collaborate? So like, what is one like bucket that you'd really like to focus on in terms of collaboration? And you can just come off mute, or if you want to drop them in the chat here, that would also be awesome. And this will also help us to navigate through how much time we're spending on each of these components. So if we have everybody saying like, hey, we really want to focus on collaboration for product creation, that's what we're going to hit really hard. So I see Kate is wanting to work on sharing the product at the end. That one can be so cool. I've seen some really awesome stuff. Jen's just here to learn. Anybody else have any strong, like, oh man, I would really love to cover some ideas, or like I want to talk to other people about what they've seen work in terms of collaboration in this process?
I guess I would be curious to hear how you get a whole classroom to agree on an idea. and, like how to generate those ideas. I mean, at this point, honestly, I'm not even sure if we're going to be given an idea for the next 6 weeks like we were for the 3 weeks, but I'm guessing that each class is going to figure out their idea. And how do you do that without like complete chaos and having students yelling at each other? And yeah.
Laura, great call out. And I think that that's one of the most, that was always for me, one of the most like anxiety producing things is like, how do I even like get this started in a way that my classroom is not going to combust?
One of the things that I learned was using iMessages. So I don't know where I learned this, but way back when I used to teach at Polaris downtown, and they in the 21st century learning skills, it said you had to have written rules of collaboration. So I always have written rules of collaboration in my room. And one of the rules is always that they have to use iMessages to solve their disagreements with their team. And so that's like teaching them to say, I feel upset when you don't listen to my idea or whatever. And it starts out, when I first started it was really hard, but now it's getting better. And over time, like I've been doing this for several years, probably 10 years or more. And so they really get, so they're good. And then I don't solve their problem. I always say, did you use an iMessage? And then I make them go back and use an iMessage. And then pretty soon, as time goes on, they just do that naturally instead of coming and trying to get me involved, which is good.
Yes, social emotional skills are, and Kayla, you can fight me if you disagree with this, but I feel like social emotional skills are like 80% of project like collaboration work. Just teaching those navigation of like, I don't agree with that, but how do we like get to a place where we can move forward? So that being said, when we are generating ideas with our groups in our classes, I think the most important thing for you as the facilitator of this generation process is that you know like what your parameters are. So you know what the like guidelines you want to set for students. At the end of the day, I need for them to do X, Y, and Z. And how they do that can be up for discussion, and like what they do that on can be up for discussion. And then also, how are you going to facilitate through like, yes, getting 37th graders to collaboratively come to an idea of this is what we are all going to focus on right now, and we're all equally bought in. Woof, that is quite a feat to pull off. But if I can say, okay, we don't all necessarily have to agree on the topic, but within this like umbrella, what are things that you're interested in? And again, like that brainstorming piece, that's going to be where you're going to like really root yourself in. And that can also be where you make some splits. So like maybe you let students decide, hey, I know that I want to focus on this, and so does Amory over there. So I'm going to like, maybe scooch on next to Amory so we can like bounce some ideas off of each other because we're both interested in the same topic. Now, in terms of tech tools to do this, there's 1,000,001. Just like there are 1,000,001 tech tools for literally everything. I really recommend narrowing your focus and choosing applications that you're going to revisit time and time again, just because it really cuts down on the amount of time that you have to spend teaching students new tools. So one of my favorite things to do, Canva. I am diehard Canva supporter, but the whiteboard features are really awesome. One, because you can see that collaboration happening in real time, but also because like they have made it pretty straightforward where you can just like double click this, or like the plus marks will come up on the side. So you can start branching ideas off of each other. If you make a sticky note on a whiteboard, it automatically like saves your username at the bottom. So you can go back and say, oh, okay, Laura made that note. And so I want to like follow up and like ask her more questions about what she meant by this or this or this. The other thing that you can do if you want to, Kaylee mentioned Flip has this really cool feature called Grid Pals. So maybe they're doing, I used to do current world problems in my social studies class. And so if I wanted to connect with people who are actually like living in that area, there are literally classrooms around the globe. Time differences can get a little bit messy sometimes, but to have that open line of collaboration where I'm recording a video, so I don't necessarily have to like pull all of my kids in at 3:00 in the morning to do a Skype call. I can have them essentially have virtual pen pals where they're bouncing ideas off of each other. I can do the same thing for different schools, for people who are in different class spaces. And so that opens up my world of collaboration to people who are physically with me right now, which is very relevant for today's age. That's how people are collaborating now, is via online platforms. So teaching them that is not only teaching them like, hey, here's how we have the social emotional skills, but here are the tech skills that you need on top of that to manage that collaboration. But there's a ton of different ways that you can do this. So when you are thinking about ideas for projects, ideas for prototypes, ideas for solutions, brainstorming, definitely one of those. You can also like, okay, they've already brainstormed, they have a general idea. You can have them pitch their ideas to each other. Again, whiteboards is a really cool thing to use for this. They can have their sticky note, and then people can give feedback with branching lines off of that. You can also help them to figure out like what inquiry questions they need to come up with. So based off of my topic, it's so impactful to have another human look at that and be like, I wonder if you should look into this and this and this. And it can lead you into a bunch of different avenues. Plus, you can also utilize Google Forms for surveys, polls, and then whatever. I love using HyperDocs for this, but to gather sources and like start to, brainstorm that aspect. HyperDocs are really awesome. So that's just going to be a Google Doc that has a bunch of different hyperlinks in it. It's also really good for students to use because they have a place that is dedicated to share their research, not just like with themselves, but with others. And then all of it's right there.
Yeah, I just want to bring up Google Forms, like taking the drama out of coming to consensus as a class and just pulling up the pie chart and just be like, sorry, 73% of you said this. Like, we're just going with, the democratic rules of the class. And I think Google Forms takes a lot of the emotion out of that process.
And not only the emotion, I think it also takes out that like the squeakiest wheel gets the grease sort of deal. Kaylee, do you want to demo that?
I'm just going to see if I have any old Google Forms. Like, honestly, Angela, you could just like have kids on like a Canva whiteboard, or even you can just write their ideas on a whiteboard, and you could have like maybe 10 ideas that they came up with. And each of those 10 could be an option in a multiple choice question. And your question could just be, which topic do you want to explore most? And each kid will select the one topic. And then you can pull up the results of that Google form. And yeah, I'll look at some Google Forms that I have to see if there's anything comparable.
And this is something that you could do like in the class period itself. So one of like my facilitation moves as we're brainstorming ideas is to make sure that I kind of stay in a backseat role and I'm not like pushing my ideas. Is I can literally be sitting, I could still even be tied to my projector if I needed to be. But as students are discussing ideas, I'm note-taking, and I can note-take directly like in a Google form, like with one question of which of these options do you think is going to be most beneficial for us to focus on? That way, as I'm writing them down, once we have gotten to a point where we're done generating ideas, I can just hit publish, send out that link to my students through Google Classroom, through Schoology, through Seesaw, whatever management platform you're using, and have them just hop on real fast. It's a 1-question Google form quiz, and then it gives me that graph in the background, so I can just bring up that graph specifically. I don't even need to have names attached to it, but I can say, okay, I've got 14 out of 14 people here. Here's our pie chart. And so this is what we're going with because this is the majority. Brittany is also a fabulous resource for you.
Yes.
And then peer feedback. So I'm actually not going to touch a whole lot on this. We have a completely separate session today that's completely focused on peer feedback, different ways for peers to provide each other feedback. But knowing that peer feedback can happen at literally any point of the project itself. So you can give feedback on somebody's brainstorming idea of what they want to focus their topic on. You can give feedback to their prototype. You can give feedback to their inquiry questions or their research. You, as the facilitator, the teacher, are going to choose, and I think that this is the most impactful thing with peer feedback, is you have to choose what they are specifically looking for to give feedback on. And once you practice that enough, you can start to have them generate, this is what I want feedback on. I'm really looking for feedback on XYZ, and that helps focus our feedback so that we don't walk away with an hour of our class time where every single student just got to like, that's awesome, cool font. When we can really narrow in our focus, give sentence stems, say, hey, I want you to give feedback. Sorry, let me rewind. It's a different process for me to say, all right, randomly pass your papers around and give each other feedback versus everybody right now is going to read the introduction section. And we are going to give feedback on your peer's paper about their claim statement. Remember, we're looking for these 3 things in a claim statement. And so I want you to circle those 3 things on their paper, or I want you to highlight in yellow. And if you don't see it, leave a comment of like, I didn't see this, this was unclear, I'm confused by this. And that's going to give them some genuine feedback. Again, if you are looking for more peer feedback strategies, we record all of these sessions, so I highly recommend that you access that recording. It's a really awesome session. I think I was collabing on that last year. It was really fun. That's the video.
So the next way to get kiddos working together is just by having them make the product together. Assigning group roles is kind of that age-old, easy, like, hey, you're the reporter, you're the timekeeper, blah, blah, blah. But Canva does a really good job. There's a hyperlink in that screenshot that says group roles in the slide deck. And Canva has really nice structures built into some nice design templates to get kids' roles carved out. And you can easily assign those to kids to fill out, like, you know, whatever role they're assigned to. And then other ways to get kiddos working together, I really like having kids design the scope and sequence of the unit itself and just say, hey guys, here's our end goal. What's the timeline that we need to get there? Or if your kiddos are in elementary school, hey, over the next 2 days, this is our goal for the project. How can we do this over the next 2 days? And have kids start to come up with their own objectives, especially in their small groups. You can, during the product creation process, if kids are working on their own product, they can come together throughout the project process and maybe have like a mentor or a buddy that is aware of their like work and how they're kind of learning, and they can come together at different points throughout the project to just check in with each other, give maybe some problems of practice time for them to be like, hey, I'm really struggling with this, what are your thoughts? Just time for people to check in with each other. I love the idea of prototyping and revisions. A whole PBL unit could just be kids working on a prototype, presenting it to each other, and then deciding which of these prototypes to actually move forward with. I think that's really great for brainstorming and teaching kids that just because it wasn't the end product doesn't mean you didn't do any learning during the prototype process. And then last, for product creation, just sharing real world web-based creations, meaning that it's just super easy to have like a flyer or a TikTok video. There's so many actual like social media things that they can create that can be shared with the real world turnkey. But I also wanted to mention Canva has great group work templates that again is in the screenshot there. And then there's a PBL HyperDoc link. And I really liked having kids work together throughout the project process in a HyperDoc. And Dre, if you could click that. This is just a basic template, but a HyperDoc is a great tool to use to embed all the resources you want and all the stages of the project in one solid hub for kids. So they know every day they're opening up their project doc, and no matter where they're at in the process, they know where to navigate in that document. And all of the resources are hyperlinked. You can embed videos. This is just a basic template to use, but I really love having one cohesive HyperDoc that kids can share with each other so they can collaborate on research together or writing or giving each other feedback.
I'll also say it's really nice, just like as the teacher, to have these chunked out so that even though every single human in this room is working on something different, we're all working on our engage section right now. And so then having like thinking through what are the main things I need for them to accomplish in this engage section so that like we can all be on the same path moving forward. It also teaches them really good time management skills, which I wish I would have learned in school because I'm still struggling with them. But to know that you can't chug out something in 10 minutes, it's actually going to take you 45.
100%. But I also think once you start using that HyperDoc, once you use it for one project, using it for the next project becomes a lot easier, and the kids are able to navigate it a lot easier too. So every project I did with my class, it was just that same format, and kids knew how to navigate it by project 2 or 3. And yes, Angela, I'll give you some links to some of my HyperDoc templates and examples. All right, engaging community partners. There are so many opportunities within PBL to get outsiders into the classroom. I think it's great to spark imagination by having guest speakers come in to launch a project. Now there's so many options for virtual meetings as well, if people aren't local, or there's even like, honestly, there's so many videos that could just spark their interest too. Or I imagine now I would honestly just chat with an AI bot and say like, hey, pretend like you're Neil deGrasse Tyson. Kids, ask him a question. And kind of mimicking a guest speaker with AI could be a cool way to get outsider info in. I love the idea of basing projects off of already existing organization initiatives, thinking about the Denver Botanic Gardens and their local ecology push. What are they already doing there that your kids could look at and say, hey, what would you add to this? Or the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, when we brought our 8th graders on a field trip there, they had to do an inquiry project on an exhibit that already existed. Consulting experts for advice or go on a site visit. Again, field trips are always great. If you can consult experts like you personally as a teacher, emailing them saying, hey, my kids are interested in this. What would you think? If kids hear that somebody like a politician or a scientist emailed you back and like you had that correspondence, kids are jazzed by that. At the end of my like political government structures unit, kids had to write a political letter to a politician of their choice, and they emailed and sent out physical letters, and some politicians wrote back to them, and it was a really memorable learning experience for them. So providing next steps or feedback to real world action groups. Maybe your kids can look at an art museum exhibit at Denver Art Museum and say, hey guys, how would you improve this? What should we tell the art directors on how to make this better? Look what's already existing in the real world, and based on your kiddos' knowledge, that would be I don't know. Is there a community partners link? Can you check that, Dre?
There is. It has not been updated in a hot minute. I know that the career and college success team is working on an updated list. If we can get our hands on it, we will definitely make sure to share it out with all of the people. But until then, I would connect with your coach, Cheltenham. I don't know who your coach is off the top of my head. But I know that there's a list. It's just in construction right now.
Sorry about that. And last, like if there's an opportunity to present to the community, and I'm going to plug this a few times, like our STEAM Expo coming up in May, that's a district-wide opportunity for kids to share their work. More info coming on that later. But finding opportunities, maybe back to school night or parent-teacher conferences, just displaying work and any opportunity really just pushes that learning experience for the kids a step further. And last, sharing projects. There are so many different ways to get kiddos' work out into the real world. I love public presentations. Once kids are done, just have them explain their projects. And it feels a lot, having a presentation around a project versus you have to read a passage and then present. They've been experiencing the learning for weeks. So like they've been fully immersed in it. So them talking about it is less stressful to them because they've lived that learning, and it's a more joyful experience for them to share that. Ooh, Angela, I taught GT and just did a whole open-ended yes. Okay, let's talk. And I'll send you links, girl. So public presentations, whether it's within your class, maybe there's a school-wide assembly where you can share the top few projects, just getting kids to talk to each other about what they learned, again, is the best way to ensure that AI didn't write their essay. Website publications are great. Having kids throughout the year develop a portfolio. So at the end of every project, hey, maybe like upload a screenshot of your picture here for unit 1, and throughout each unit have kids update their portfolio so they have a nice narrative of work throughout the year. And I think Denver School of the Arts has kids starting freshman year start to build their portfolio as well. Sharing projects is also great, just structuring time at the end for maybe you have a quick graphic organizer and kids walk around and take notes on their other peers' projects. Having students be the center of the knowledge is, again, a way for kids to learn that they don't just have to go to AI for everything. I really like using discussion boards like on Schoology or even in Canva. Hey, post a link to your project, guys. Everybody take 30 minutes to explore some works of your peers, comment based on our rubric or criteria for success, and just start a conversation online and just do a little investigating on what your peers are learning about. And last, I just love to end each unit or each project with celebrations. So much learning happened, and to get that momentum continuing for the next project, just taking time to celebrate all the cool things and having it more of like an asset-based celebration, regardless if kids didn't finish or not, just really celebrating the learning that happened during that time. I like to give out awards for really silly categories. Again, just to like shadow kids that might not always get shouted out for getting an A on a math test.
And I think also just depending on the project that you are facilitating with them, that will lead itself to more like authentic ways to share. So like if you are having your kids do weather reports, if there is already like a school news broadcast, awesome, like populate it on there, or like work with them to make this like a weekly segment thing. Also, like QR codes can be your best friend. So I used to have my students do their presentation. You can have that done through Flip. You can do it in person and like film it with an iPad, and then be able to post those in the hallway on like QR codes of like, check out these awesome projects. It's just a quick scan, and then you can look at it on your phone just to see like the cool things that they're doing. And then taking it a step further. That will be really awesome for them. We have a couple of minutes left. What questions do you have?
Angie, if you're still with us, I sent the link to the GT project.
I am. Thank you so much. I have to go. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to make a copy if that's okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Is there a link that I have to fill out for attendance or anything?
I'll go ahead and just manually push your credit.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry I have to go. I just have to have it.
No worries. Does anybody else have any like questions? Any like, okay, here's my project. Let me pitch it. What do you think would be the best places to integrate in some collaboration? It's also okay if your brain is just really full right now and you need some like processing time afterwards.
Well, let's see. My principal just said that the 4th grade is going to be doing a novel study, and it's going to involve like the Black arts movement, poetry, Maya Angelou and Langston Hughes, and it's about a book, One Crazy Summer, I think that's called. One Crazy Summer. So, and as librarian, I am supposed to come up with ideas to help enrich that.
The thing that comes up on the top of my mind is, as you're introducing them to those like works, having them do like book reviews or other things like that. And then also maybe like that final project is then them like taking those inspiration pieces and creating their own piece of work with it, maybe through Book Creator or something else like that. I know that they talk about Book Creator in strategy 4 of our breakout sessions today, in our teacher librarians group. So if you want to go and check out the recording for that, and I think I don't want to lie while I'm being recorded, but I'm pretty sure that we might be getting access to Book Creator for free for a year. So that should be in the works coming soon. Would be a really cool, like, that is a project, like you're going to write your own book. That's definitely falls into project-based learning. And then all of the checks that you can have along the way for that. There are a lot of different opportunities for you to pull in that collaborative aspect to it.
I have kind of a broader question in terms of thinking about Canva. I feel like there are tech tools out there that I didn't know that DPS teachers had access to. Is there a great list of like what's already, what we have a subscription for, what's already paid for, that I don't know about and I'm not using it?
Yes. I'm going to get you a list. Like ever since like all of the privacy protection things came into place, like we've had to do a lot of shifts. So we have like a list of, hey, you might have been using this tool, consider using this free and permissible tool for the district. I'll get you that list.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Katie's grabbing that right now.
I've been in the district 10 years and I would still I can't keep track.
Correct. Especially with like how many tools there are just constantly coming out. And again, that's why we say that if there's one tool that does like a whole bunch of different things that you can really focus in on your students using, like that's going to be a lot of bang for your buck right there. Canva's my favorite just because you come in and you can do so much stuff, from making a flyer to creating a newscast. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. And on top of that, a lot of organizations and companies use Canva for like graphic design and marketing. And so these are real legitimate skills that you can be teaching your kids while they're working on classroom products. And I've seen a lot of students engage with project-based learning tasks, and then they take it a step further, even after like that final product deadline is passed, they're still working on this product because they're passionate about it. And I've seen kids like design their own logos and brands and sell stuff. And like, it's so cool to see them like take this like little nugget of idea that they got in class and like really go full fledged with it. So yes, Kaylee dropped that link in. It's a great link that will continue to be updated by us as we continue to get DPAs in and feedback on things. But we're at time.
Yes.
So
we're a minute late. People are back in the main room for our closure. I'm sorry, you guys.
But we're gonna navigate back over. If at any time you're like, okay, this was great, and I still am a little like confused, or I'm struggling, or I just want some more thought partnership in that, reach out to your digital coach. They are your like point person support for all of that idea generation, for one-on-one support when you're implementing things in your classroom. We love to get out and be as helpful to you as you need us to be. So I'd really, 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 really push that. But otherwise, thank you for coming. Thank you for engaging. We appreciate all of you endlessly. And no school tomorrow for most of you. So let's go.
Bye, guys. Have a good day.